Here we are back at the grinder. I'm about to apply my edge. And there's a whole bunch of ways that people do this. I do all of it on this single machine that I've been standing in front of for this entire video. You can use stones, you could use a jig where this gets clamped into place, and then there's little arms that swing by. There's a bunch of good systems for people to use, and if you're not putting edges on knives every single day, chances are you trying to put your edge on this blade the way I'm going to do it is you're going to ruin this thing. So don't do it this way if you're not comfortable. The only way to learn how I do it though is to screw up 100,000 blades that you've spent days and days working on. So I'm going to show you how to do it on the machine. There are a bunch of makers that at least start their edges like this. My buddy Sean Hatcher will hold his knife perfectly flat and then rotate this plate to meet his angle. I don't do that. I hold my knife at an angle and then I try my best to keep my arms locked in on my knife's gut and then just kind of in the hips, Happy Gilmore style, it's all in the hips, just dragging it along. And I think one of my favorite pieces of knife making advice I ever got was from an old Japanese swordsmith. I don't know his name, it was just on some random video I saw, but he said that the angle is not so important, but the consistency of the angle is important. So I found that to be very true. I'm going to admit I don't know what angle this is. I do put a steeper angle on a more aggressive blade, something that I know is going to take a bit of pounding so it can have a fatter edge, but I also leave a fair amount of thickness on the edge too. So for a chef's knife or a kitchen blade or razor or something, like I'm almost grinding into my handle. That's kind of where my gauge is. Like if I can get my edge in there at as steep of an angle as I can without ruining my handle material up here, that's as steep as it can go. So if you are trying to sharpen your knife at home on a stone, you're not going to run into any problems like that. So that's my thinking of it. I do have like a very artisan, hands-on approach to making these things. As you've noticed from the way that I work, I apologize, like I can't help you with technique when it's like, oh, well, you just grip it and rip it and then it comes out perfect. That's my style. That's, I guess, where experience and skill comes in, and the only way that you're going to get that is through practice. So I can guide you along the path and tell you where to turn, but you're not going to get there unless you go out and start doing it. So I've got a 120 on here. It's not a super fresh one, but then again, I don't have a whole lot of edge to eat. I could probably jump right up to a higher grit belt, but I still say like the number one thing with grinding a piece of metal like this, if you want crisp, clean lines, and when you're talking an edge, it better be real crisp and real clean and real straight. You want to do is the least amount of strokes that you can possibly do, because every time you go here and then you go back, you might be a little bit different. Unless you have some kind of perfect holding setup, it's going to be a little different. So if I can get 2 passes on a 120 and then I got a burr, I've got 2 opportunities to screw it up. So I'm going to hit it real hard on the 120 and get my burr started, and I'll try my best to show that it's kind of a tiny itty bitty little thing, and then my camera has this much of a focal distance on it, so I might have to put it down, but towards the higher ends of polishing it becomes very evident, and I'll show you what you're looking for. So I'm going to start to grind this. It might note that I'm going to run my belt extremely slow. I don't want any chance of any kind of heat buildup on here. Like you can see, I can touch it. It's barely really moving, and it's super important to keep everything very tight so you can keep your angle as consistent as possible. And practice, practice, practice. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Feel free to watch. Feel free to skip it. And I don't have a burr going yet, which is a good thing, because I didn't do the other side yet. So this part right here is the thinnest part of the edge. You ideally would like to have this perfectly consistent line going the whole way across, but just by the nature of how you grind, and you got to kind of tilt it a little bit, this area tends to get eaten away a little bit quicker than this area and this area. So now that I have the tiniest bit of a burr developing, and it's not even, I can feel there's some right here and there's a little bit right here, I'm just going to very lightly pass over the areas that have a burr going on as I make my way to getting a burr across the entire way. So switch sides, keep it consistent, and just stay super duper steady. So now I have much more of a burr going on up here, but still not, there's a little bit right there, but gotta keep going back and forth. Alright, doing good. I can see that I need a little bit more work down here. There we go. Now we're starting to get some development all the way across. One more on this side to keep it even. One more. Alright. Now we're going to do that with all the other belts.